All right, Taylor, I know what you're thinking, but don't worry. Not a lot of people are likely going to see this video. Welcome back, guys. This is Eric here with Guitarsenal. Having a little bit of fun with Taylor Swift, maybe, in my own mind, perhaps. We're going to be demoing a 1974 Fender Princeton. And the Princeton really is one of my favorite Fender amps that was ever produced. These things are awesome. They're like 12, 13 watts, low wattage, a little bit, little bit more output than the Fender Champ, but not quite as beefy as the Fender Deluxe, which it gets in at about 22 watts with a 12-inch speaker. The Fender Princeton gets in, depending on the strength of the tubes you're using, around 12 or 14 watts with a 10-inch speaker. So it's kind of the Goldilocks zone between the Champ and the Fender Deluxe. And man, these amps are great. This particular one's a 74, and the cool thing about the Fender Princetons is that there were some minor tweaks to the design of the amp, and there were some minor tweaks to the circuitry, like you went from brown face to black face, and there was a transitional period. So like if you get into the 1963 Fender Princetons, they'll have what's called tuxedo cosmetics, where they're black with the white knobs. And those amplifiers generally, well, none of them had reverb, okay? The Princeton Reverb didn't come out until around 65, okay? And then they kept going along with the Princeton Reverb all the way into the CVS buyout era, and then getting into, obviously, the mid to late 70s and on up. This one is a 74, so it's not a drip edge like my Super Reverb is, but she sounds wonderful. And this particular example has a 10-inch speaker. And this is an early enough Fender Princeton where it actually still has a pine cabinet. When you start getting into some of the later Fender amps, especially the small combo amps, they started using some crappier woods and trying to, as an effort to try to save some money. So it's not going to be uncommon for you to find that a lot of these amps might have the crummier cabinet, but this one does have a hardwood cabinet, and it sounds great. It's got some cosmetic blims and blemishes here and there, but I actually bought this amp from the guys up at Atlanta Discount Music, and I know I always drop their name, but that's one of the places I shop at, and yeah, I spend money with them from time to time, and I've been looking for a Fender Princeton Reverb for quite some time and just trying to locate one, so I was finally able to find a good example. It's a perfect little club amp. It's a perfect amp to take to a small venue where, like right now we're running it on 7, and you can hit the front end with maybe an overdrive to kind of get a little bit beefier sound without having to crank it so loud that your ears are going to bleed. Now we are going to crank this amp. They do get a little bit farty on the top end with the bass response, can get a little flubby sounding. Now what I've heard is if you look at the Mojo Tone company and look at the Mojo Tone cabinets, Mojo Tone makes a drop-in cabinet that you can take your chassis out of your Princeton Reverb, drop it in their cabinet, and you can run a 12-inch speaker. Now, from what a lot of people say is that running the 12 with the Princeton is kind of where it's at. It kind of becomes like a baby deluxe at that point. So instead of having a 22-watt deluxe, you have a slightly smaller cabinet with a 12, 14-watt amp, which is kind of neat. But this is a 10-inch, and we're going to listen to it. And Chad's going to noodle with the knobs, and we're just going to try to make a little bit of noise here. That's the amp on 7. All right, get the vibrato off. And so now we're going to get it down to about 3 there. Or no, that's on 5. And you're getting pretty much straight up clean tone with this. You're not really getting any breakup until you get around 7 on this amp. The Princeton Reverb has always been a really good recording amp, just because a lot of people tend to like the nice clean, that you get at not a terribly loud volume, so it's a perfect thing to kind of mic up, throw in the studio, and go for it. And then if you add, you start adding a little bit of modulation over the top. Let's say you get, like I've got the Wampler faux spring reverb here. Let's take out the reverb on the amp and use the Wampler faux spring reverb and make maybe a hit of splashback. Then you get, maybe just push the front end of the amp with a TC line booster. Very warm sounding amp. That is such a nice kind of sound, and it's not overly piercing or loud or obnoxious at all. It's nice and warm. And I would imagine that would mic up in a studio setting real nice. Maybe not sitting in a mix. That's the only thing about the Princeton. It is a little bit of a lightweight, but in a gig where you got to keep up with the drummer, you can wrap the knobs on this thing, and it'll get into some really good territory. And you'd be surprised how well this little amp would keep up even with a drummer. Now, maybe not like a loud drummer, but if you're in a little blues rock setting or something like that where you got a nice, tasteful drummer kind of laying back and doing his thing, I mean... you can really get in there, and that is such a fat, nice sound right there out of that amp. And it's not loud at all, which is wonderful. Get the idea there. I was getting a little bit silly territory, but very, very nice on the vibrato. Sounds wonderful on this amplifier. We'll crank it here in a second and see how it sounds getting into silly territory. That was the Wampler faux spring reverb. We'll get back to the amps reverb and just kind of see how it sounds. It's got a bit of splash back there with the reverb. Definitely not obnoxious by any stretch. Why don't you get into some of the higher reverb settings? Okay, now that's cavernous. Okay, so that's kind of the extent and splashiness of the reverb on the amp, kind of getting into surf territory. I'm not a surf guitarist, but there's my take on it. All right, now we're going to crank the amp. This is the amp on the top end of the register, all the way up. Tell you what, real quick, while he's noodling with the knobs, let me just make sure I might have a string or two out here. Okay, here we go. Sort of like that. It's kind of sloppy, but that's the kind of territory you're getting into. Now, one thing I do notice on the Fender Princeton, and this is a lot of Princetons, but this particular Princeton reverb, when you get on the neck pickup and get on the top end of the register, it does get a little flubby. So listen to the low end register when I hit this note. That's a little better, isn't it?
Turn that bass down a little bit, it seems to clean it up pretty
good. Okay, and that's on the top end. That's not too bad on the neck pickup. I'll tell you what, let's, since we've got a little bit of that flubbiness out on the top end on this Fender Princeton here, I'm going to try that faux spring reverb again, get rid of the amps reverb, and let's hit the nobles on the front end and see how that sounds with the neck pickup. Getting closer, Rory. Forgive me. Good for that. It's got some nice punch, you know, even in on the bridge pickup, it's still got some nice spank without being, you know, flubby on the high register. Sounds really nice. At least maybe, well, other than my sloppy playing Butcher and Poor Rory songs, but I don't know, I'm just picking up on some Rory Gallagher. I can't help it. You know, you just got to go where the music takes you sometimes. Very nice sounding amplifier.
Hey, hit that TC real quick with this thing on about 8.
The TC? Okay, so what I've got here is an old 80s TC electro. Listen to me. This is a linear line booster. It's a distortion pedal, okay? I'm trying to get technical and I'm not a technical-minded man, okay? It's a TC line booster, dang it, okay? And we've got it set for a modest kiss. Without...
I think it sounds pretty good right on about 8.5.
Yep, I agree.
It doesn't get too flubby, but it's still got that it's got balls.
I think on the upper end of the register, you start getting to the completely cranked mode in the Princeton, it can get into the silly territory. I think that's about where that amp sounds best with this particular guitar in this particular room on this particular day, because we know all of those variables matter. Man, what a killer amplifier. Guys, thanks for watching today's video, and just so you know, the way we approach these videos is we like to learn along with you guys. We like to try to kind of figure out where these amps sound good, try to dime them in, figure out how it fits with our playing style. I know I kind of flub a bit. We don't edit these videos. We don't preconceive any of this. We just sort of go for it. Sometimes I make a few little mistakes on the guitar, but we're only human. We don't get silly and try to edit out all this crap. We just try to have fun. That's what music's about, is trying to enjoy yourself. And if you can't have fun, then why are you doing it? But yeah, that's cool. Very, very cool amplifier. An essential part of any well-stocked studio. You have to have a Fender Princeton. You have to have a Fender Deluxe. That's two amps that you must have if you are a studio guy. That's like an essential working man's tool in the arsenal. That's the perfect amp to just take to a small gig or a small get-together or something or a rehearsal amp where you don't want to put wear and tear on your other gear. It's perfect for that. Princeton Reverbs and standard Princeton's, non-reverb models, both have their place, and they are wonderful tools. Thanks for watching today's video. Remember, we post every Monday and every Friday. Make sure you tune in. We really enjoy having fun with these old amps and a lot of this old cool gear, and we hope that you enjoy it too. So thanks for watching today, and we'll see you next time. I want to hear that crazy reverb again. Crank that dang reverb up.